figured out how that the voice is produced, let's talk about how we can change the vocal characteristics. When we discuss voice, we're really discussing how loud the voice is, the pitch of the voice, and the quality of the voice. So when we talk about loudness or intensity, loudness is the perceptual measure of intensity. So if we're talking at this volume versus this volume, we can change our loudness without changing our pitch. So think about when you go to a football game or you go to a bar or a club or even a loud restaurant, you're going to have a louder voice in order to carry that to get your conversation or your message across. So when we think of loudness or intensity, it's just a buildup of that subglottic air pressure. So looking at our picture here, if we close the vocal folds very tightly and then expel that air through the vocal folds, then we can have increased loudness without changing any other characteristic of the vocal folds other than just closing them together very tightly. The more we force that air through the vocal folds, the more we can amplify that sound. So we can compare that to a teapot that has the little whistler on it. If you have the whistler over it, we're building up that air pressure underneath, and as it's expelled through the whistler, we get the whistling sound. If we have the little cap open, then we're not going to have any sound because there's no pressure building up underneath. When we think of it in terms of waves or displacement of molecules, if we think of the molecules being here at this line, if a molecule only goes from here to here, then it's not going to be very loud, right? But if a molecule is going from here to here, then it's going to be a louder sound. And that's when we talk about the displacement of the molecules. And it doesn't matter how many times it's necessarily happening, just that the height of the waves is changing, okay? On the flip side of that, when we have elasticity or the pitch of the voice, we're talking about the length, the tension, and the mass. And that relates to how many times the vocal folds can vibrate within 1 second as we're talking. So the more times it vibrates per second, the higher the pitch. The fewer times it's vibrating per second, or that opening and closing of the vocal folds, the lower the pitch, the fewer times. So I like to think of it in terms of rubber bands when we talk about the mass, the length, and the tension of the vocal folds. So here I have a short purple rubber band, and you can see it's fairly thick. Okay, so we'll imagine that this is the male vocal fold, and in the case of your picture here, it's going to be this one on the left, right? If we have a vocal fold that's this thick and this length, we can only stretch it so far, right? So we have this kind of pitch range versus a vocal fold that is a little bit thinner, maybe in a female, we can stretch it even farther. So let's try here. These are the lengths, and we can stretch this one this far, right, versus this one this far. Okay, and we can get more elastic over time, so maybe as we work on stretching those vocal folds as a singer, then the vocal folds become more flexible, we can get better pitch. But overall, this is going to be our pitch range. I want you to look very closely at this because as you stretch the rubber band, you're also changing the mass. So right here we have just a rubber band or our vocal folds relaxed, and if we stretch them out, you can see it's getting thinner. And we relax them back down, we're getting more mass. When we talk about mass, we're not just talking about what we see at the top of the vocal folds that we commonly associate with vocal folds from our view through the nose into the top of the larynx, but also from the side. So if I come back to this picture here, this mass, right? So if this is the bottom of the vocal fold, this is the top of the vocal fold that we see from our endoscopy, then we're also talking about this mass this way, okay? So we can associate thicker vocal folds with lower pitch, thinner vocal folds with higher pitch, more tension, less mass as we stretch them out, a higher pitch, and more length, higher pitch, okay? And that can be at rest or when we're stretched out. So if we imagine these are my vocal folds kind of here in the middle, I don't have a very high voice, but it's high enough. Then we can imagine this is my vocal folds when I go E, Okay, relaxing those vocal folds back down.